Welcome to the Crackin Backs Podcast, where today's episode shines a light on the compassionate world of hospice care with our special guest, Phillip Puleo, a dedicated hospice nurse. Many have heard of hospice, but few truly understand the depth and misconceptions surrounding this vital service. Phillip is here to provide answers and understanding of hospice care, share a day in the life of a hospice nurse, and reveal the profound lessons learned from those at life's final chapter. Our conversation today dives into the complexities of misunderstandings of Alzheimer's care, offering invaluable advice for patients and caregivers navigating this challenging journey. Phillip will also open up about his personal battle with Crohn's disease, discussing his turn towards natural healing methods and how this experience has enriched his approach to patient care. For those considering natural remedies for health issues, Phillip's insights are not to be missed. His unique perspective brings the gap between professional caregiving and personal health suggestions and struggles, offering a holistic view on patient care. So stay tuned as we explore these deeply human experiences, learning how to face them with patience, understanding, and most importantly, compassion.
Hey, welcome to the show. Hey, we have on the show today Phillip. And Phillip is, I'm not even going to try and pronounce your last name. If it's like Puleo?
No, actually, my last name is Puleo, Puleo.
Why do I have Mac? All right, Puleo. All right.
Yeah.
We have on Mac. And what Phillip is he's a hospice nurse, but he's more than that. He took care of my mother-in-law at a memory care facility in Arizona, and he didn't just take care of her. He kind of set the bar super high to the point where my wife loved going to Arizona, and he made the journey so special to the point where she just fell in love with this man. And I started listening to her stories every time she would come home of how this man made the journey of my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's, such an incredible journey that we had to have him on to talk about both hospice, Alzheimer, and then he has a personal story that's pretty cool. But I wanted to on air thank you for taking care of my family, taking care of my wife, taking care of her siblings, and most of all, taking care of Elaine. You did an amazing job, and you truly are an angel on earth. And I think all hospice nurses are angels on earth, and I want to publicly say that. A lot of people have heard the term hospice, and they really don't know what that means. They think it's like a transitional period. But what are some common misconceptions about hospice care that you encounter, and how do you address them with patients and their families?
Yeah. So first off, thank you for that. It was an honor to take care of. It's an honor to take care of all of my patients. Actually, it's an honor to take care of Elaine, to be involved with your family. So I definitely appreciate that. With hospice, there is a lot of misconceptions. Typically, we get a lot of, they think that we're just gonna put their mother or their father on just morphine, like stop everything and just put them on morphine right away. And that's not typically the case. With every case, it's all individualized. So we like to individualize that. So whatever you're ready for that. But hospice in a whole is you definitely have to qualify. But a lot of people, in order to qualify, you have to have a terminal diagnosis. So a lot of people do have terminal diagnosis. They just don't really realize it. Heart disease, stuff like that, COPD, you can kind of be diagnosed with those type of diseases, Alzheimer's as well. Those diseases will never get better. So they'll only progressively get worse. So those are considered terminal at that point, right? So if you qualify, it's part of the Social Security Administration Act. You don't have to pay for anything. Hospice is paid through by Medicare. So if you qualify and you need the extra support and extra help, hospice is there to be able to guide you and navigate you through the healthcare system, whether you need placement or you need support for your family, extra caregiving, meals on wheels, stuff like that we offer. But the other thing is just supporting the family in that journey, right? We like to talk about successful end of life, and a successful end of life is what's successful to you is a successful end of life. So however you want to die on that journey, right? So I will be there to advocate for you in that regard, right? But a lot of patients come off of service, they get better. We start discontinuing a lot of medications that were never reconciled over the years, and patients start to get better. You don't know how many times I come into a case and patients has like 3 blood pressure medications and their blood pressure's in the toilet, and they're like, I'm tired, and it's just coming in and looking at it and just eliminating some of those things. Obviously with the physician's oversight, we're able to help them have a better quality of life, at the end of the day.
How does one who's a nurse, I mean, it takes a special person not only to be on even oncology, but how does one choose to be hospice, and how do you support those? How do you support the families during this challenging time beyond the medication part?
Yeah, so a lot of it for me is education. I try to support the families, and like I said, everything is individualized. So in your guys' case, it's a lot of education. You guys are trying to meet you at that intellectual level, because those are the type of questions that you're asking, right? So we're trying to meet you where you are and trying to be able to get you to understand in a certain way, and certain people personalities, just don't mix. But it's just trying to figure out. I typically try to come in and I try to, for one, I'm pretty honest and upfront about the situation. That way the family understands what's going on, and they can make the right decisions for their family and their loved one. Right. You get a lot of that. You get a lot of up in the air. A lot of people, especially when I worked in the hospital, there wasn't a lot of explaining going on to the patients and stuff like that. I was the one drawing the pictures on the boards and trying to really get them to understand, this is what's going on. I mean, because you have to really make a decision, right? And you need that information to be able to make the decision that's right for you. So just trying to meet them. There's a lot, it just individualized. So sometimes you come into a house and they're just struggling with, cleaning and bathing and repositioning. Maybe you had a big significant mobility loss, so they're just trying to adjust with that. Some families it's adjusting with the new baseline of after a fall, post fall, and just the weakness, and or it could be Alzheimer's that's progressing, and we're noticing a different outcome, right? A different person, different language in a person all of a sudden, and those are signs of progression in Alzheimer's. So it's always a continuous process, and my job is to be able to prepare you for what comes next. Looking at the diagnosis and looking at everything else that's going on with your loved one, and just really trying to understand, like, this is a progressive disease and this is what's coming next. Like I said, some patients can be fine for years, and hospice doesn't run out. You can, if you need help and you need resources, definitely reach out, and see if you can get that. Hospice can definitely get you in touch, and all it takes is just a phone call. They'll get there for you. So yeah,
Hey, Phil,
that's
let me
kind of
ask
how
you,
I try to do that.
in your experiences, is there things that you recall from the past or even most recently that was a life lesson for you, something that was a profound experience that you might
Well,
might use in daily life now?
yeah, absolutely. Every situation and scenario is a profound experience. There's always a lesson to be learned, through death. Absolutely. And whatever that lesson is to you is individualized, right? So for me, there is always that lesson that comes out of each patient, each person, each family, each family member. But one thing that I do know that I've kind of held with me a lot is that my throughout my career, I've been a nurse for about 18 years. And throughout my career, I've mostly worked senior geriatric, but working in hospice and through the nursing homes and stuff. What I've really noticed that really holds to me is that, when our patients are becoming active, meaning they become into this actively dying process, is what we like to term it, is a lot of them start to see, I would say 90% of those patients will see somebody from the other side, right? It doesn't matter what religion they are. It doesn't matter, they've been in war, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. There's no really context to it, but they do see people and they come to them and they tell them that it's okay, that it's going to be okay. So, for me, I hold on to that because, I always tell my patients, I always ask them, are you religious? What is your religion? And whatever their religion is, to me, honestly, I really feel like that's what's going to happen to them. Like I said, 90%, I've had Buddhists, I've had Christians, LDS, I've had all these patients that just throughout different walks of life, different backgrounds, different religions, and they all see, I had a lady that had a string. She woke up and there was a string hanging from the ceiling and she grabbed it and she followed it all the way to heaven and met Jesus. So, and she woke up the next day and then the next day she was gone. So, so there's, so every time I come in, I see a patient, I say, hey, are you religious? What do you believe in? And a lot of our patients are Christian, a lot of them believe in Jesus and heaven. And so I tell them, well, you know where you're going. Don't worry, so it is really, to me, I feel that, like I said, no matter what religion, that's really what I hold on to out of everything, out of all of the experiences, out of all the crazy things that I've seen and done. I really hold on to that. And it's just, for me with hospice, it's so hard. Yes. And people do say, how do you do that? And, but it's just so rewarding for me in the regards that it's just not impactful on one person's life. I mean, I definitely advocate and try to make that right for the patient. And like I said, a successful end of life, but the ripple effect of what I do is just so great. And that's really what really the appreciation. I mean, me and my best friend, we do this and we've been doing it together for a long time. And, when he first started, I got him into hospice from the nursing homes and the hospital. It was really a lot of, he just couldn't believe how appreciative the families were, really. The patients and the families are just so appreciative, and you just feel that mutual respect and that appreciation. So that's really why I do it. I did have a bad experience with my grandmother on hospice as well. So, but that's a different story. But yeah, so I try to be that person. I try to be that person for you guys, for the families, for the patients.
Mm. Did you always feel that way about someone being on the other side before you became a hospice nurse? Did you have a belief system about what death was about, and then suddenly you're enlightened?
I kind of grew up Christian through the church and stuff, but I really wasn't, I don't really know. Honestly, I know for sure it wasn't that profound, right? It wasn't that like, wow, this is happening 90% of the time. Like there's something to this, right? It wasn't that profound. I mean, my dad passed away earlier on, and I knew he was in a better place, right? But it wasn't that profound, that's kind of, there wasn't a construct in my mind necessarily of what I thought the afterlife was. I didn't really understand it yet, I guess you would say, but doing this definitely really helps kind of make it understandable a little bit, make it less scary, you know.
Those are good. Those are good lessons
Are
for you.
a lot of your patients in pain when they? Are a lot of your patients in pain when they come in and are uh, wanting to die?
Yes, we do have patients that are in pain, and our goal is to get that pain under control within 24 hours. Um, right away, immediately, you know, we'll definitely stay there and get the patient stabilized and under control, depending on what those symptoms are. We can be aggressive about managing symptoms, absolutely. Um, and yes, there are patients that just don't understand why they're still here, or they want to go, and um, you know, their loneliness is a big deal, you know, with the elderly population. So yeah, loneliness is such a big deal with the elderly population. You know, it's one of those things that a lot of people don't have any more friends, and you know, they're in their 90s, and they just don't really have anything. The world isn't the same. They don't recognize it. So I do get a lot of that. I get a lot of, you know, I try to sit and talk and just be that person. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and even when I worked in the nursing homes, you know, just asking, you know, how was your day? How did you sleep last night? You know, just those little things, just treating people like people really is what I try to do.
A lot of
Do
cultures.
they like to communicate? Sorry. Go ahead.
A lot of cultures. Um, they reverend the elderly, and it seems like our culture maybe doesn't do that as much, and a lot of people just drop people off at these homes and then say goodbye. And you touched about the loneliness, and what are some advice you have for family members? Because I think a lot of people don't know how to talk to the elderly, yet they're probably the best storytellers left on earth. They want to talk about their stuff. So, what's your advice to family members that are dealing with that? Because they just see, sometimes we see elderly as a burden and not as a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I really talk about this a lot with my patients and families. I really think as Americans, we do such a disservice to our senior population, our elderly population, and it's really disservice to our younger population as well, because I honestly think that we should be having the elderly population teaching the younger population, because you know, the elderly population, they've experienced things in their life that we'll never experience unless something happens cataclysmic or something changes drastically about how our societies ran. But you know, those are things that, you know, they've you can't take away from them. And I really think that having them to be able to teach and educate our young people. I think we kind of talked about this a little bit when you were in town, and we talked about just people not growing up on farms anymore, and um, not seeing death firsthand every day in their life like they used to. So death is really this scary thing, you know. And people nowadays like to avoid it. You know, nobody likes to talk about it, but I think, you know, just not being able to teach, you know, other countries, like you said, Japan and these other countries where these elderly populations, they live a lot longer. They really have day centers for them, and they're incorporated into society and into the community a lot more. You know, for families with loved one in this situation, you know, obviously, environment is a big deal when it comes to health, when it comes to wellness, when it comes to mental health and getting better. So keep that in mind as far as that goes. Environment is a huge deal, right? So if I'm in an environment I don't like, um, it's going to be very hard for me to get better,
Right.
right? It's going to be very, very hard for me to get better. So, you know, I encourage families just to be involved. Really, it's just to really get to know your loved one. I mean, like I said, everything's individualized based on the person, right? So you really got to talk to them, open up that line of communication, really talk to them about, you know, find out what they like to do, what they used to do. We have families that do art projects with their loved ones. We like to recommend things that will you guys can keep forever and hand it down to the family, you know, and to the kids and possibly learn from it, you know. So a lot of reminiscence therapy stuff where you're doing like memories, you know, or books and stuff like that. That's what we like to do for the Alzheimer's patients as well. So, but you know, stuff like that. But just really getting to know your loved one is going to be key. Is just opening up that line of communication.
Have you ever encouraged people to write their life story? Because I know I've lost both my parents, and we don't really have, when we go out to lunch with them, we just talk surface. We never really have the questions until they pass. I have so many questions I wish I could ask my mother and my father now about their past that
Yeah.
I never asked while they were alive. Have you ever encouraged your patients to write their life story, or have their loved ones sit down with them and write their life story while they're still around?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've definitely talked about. I've had so many different patients throughout the years that were governors and just ran businesses, astronaut engineers, you know, just so many different things. And really, that's really what fascinated me about the senior population is growing up, I didn't really have my my grandparents and I didn't have a lot of family when I was a kid, and being able to sit and talk to them about their past, you know, I was so intrigued and amazed, and I always just try to get information from people, you know, about their life and what they did and just different things, you know. And we've actually had a couple patients that have movies and books written, military stuff, you know, stuff like that. But there's just so many things. We talk about it. Colleagues, I've been with several colleagues where they talk about just writing a book based on just the interactions that we've had with patients and families and stuff like that. It can go on and on. But yeah, there hasn't really been a particular one that stuck out to me as far as that goes. But I know that we did have a gentleman that was a big military guy that was a movie was made about him and
Oh,
stuff like
wow.
that.
All
So
right, let's transition a little bit into your specialty, which is Alzheimer's patients. And
okay, yeah.
this disease, in my opinion, is both feared and so misunderstood. What advice can you give through your experience from beginning to end for both the patient and the caregiver on the stages of this disease and everything about it?
Yeah, so Alzheimer's is one of those things that is going to be a huge burden to our society. It's already a burden to our patients and our families, and it is an issue for society now, but it's only going to get worse as our society continues to age. It's just going to be a major issue. And you know, it's not really well understood as far as the cause of it. There's a lot of speculation out there. There's been a lot of speculation for years, but it is one of those diseases that is terminal and it only progresses, and it does go through stages, like you mentioned. Um, it can take somebody a long time. It's one of those diseases that's just so horrible because it could take somebody, you know, somebody could live 20 years with Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
you know, and people are getting diagnosed earlier and earlier. But a lot of Alzheimer's and dementia kind of goes hand in hand. Alzheimer's is an actual disease that can be tested for. Dementia falls under that whole spectrum because it you lose your memory and you lose brain cells, and depending on what the cause is. Um, but dementia is part of that whole package as well. And a lot of 10% of what you see in dementia patients is related to could be related to your heart and diet and stuff like that. So, you know, really taking care of yourself in that regards, low inflammatory stuff. There's a lot of studies that are coming out where they've fed people strawberry powder and their memory is a little bit better on a test, you know, that they've conducted. And a lot of it is really attributed to, I think, diet and what we're doing as far as exercise and trying to keep our heart healthy. Um, you know, I've worked with this population for a long time, I've come in contact with a lot of different physicians and doctors, and I try to ask and I try to get information as far as like what's the best course of action that I can do to help prevent this. And, a lot of the same thing is trying to control your blood pressure and what you're eating, So that's kind of what I've been doing. There's a lot of science in olfactory enhancements. There's a lot of science in mushrooms and lion's mane and stuff like that with helping the nervous system regrow. A lot of people boast about ginkgo biloba and stuff that helps with increasing circulation to the brain. So a lot of that stuff is a healthy nervous system, a healthy circulatory system, and a healthy diet, which can all be done through, diet, diet and exercise. So that's really all we got right now in this battle.
Do you ever counsel the family members on patience? Because patience, not patients that you treat, but having that patience, realizing that the repetitive questions, the repetitive this is not your loved one, and how to deal with that. Because I even saw some healthcare workers in the early stages getting frustrated with my mother-in-law,
right.
and they were supposedly Alzheimer's nurses, and they were getting frustrated. And how do you counsel with your 18 years experience to the family members dealing with it to help that person? Because I'm sure if I'm frustrated, then the patient is going to feel that frustration and probably get worse. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when we do our dementia and Alzheimer's training and education, a lot of what you have to realize is, like I said, is the environment is really important, right, to your mental health and everything, and that kind of plays into Alzheimer's and dementia as well. So when you're looking for placement or placing your loved one in this type of environment, definitely do your research, and really do the tour and look and kind of see how the patients look when you get there, and really do your due diligence, ask questions, and ask tough questions to the staff, while you're doing a tour. Pull somebody to the side and say, hey, what would you do in this instance, or what do you have these problems, so just really do your due diligence when you're dealing with that, because right now we're having we have a lot of staffing issues in the healthcare industry. So a lot of these places are undertrained, understaffed. We have, since I started nursing, we were LPNs were taking care of these patients. Now we have med techs in Arizona that do this, and they're just trained on the job, so there's not a lot of training there. So when you're dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia population, it's all about approach, how you're approaching these people, because you have to realize they don't have a very good memory. They don't know their environment. And, here I am, some guy just coming up to them, and I'm just like, hey, let's go, let's do this. They don't know who I am. So there's a lot of fear and anxiety that comes with that, So, even just your tone of voice, like we talked about, having that, I like to call it, the vibe. We tell the staff that if you're having a bad day, you come in to work and you're having a bad day, your patients are going to pick up on that, and they're going to have a bad day as well. Right. So it's all about approach. We talk about having a soft approach with patients. Some patients will be repetitive and keep asking the same questions. But like I said, once again, their memory is bad. Right. We're talking about a neurodegenerative disease where it takes your memories, it takes your short-term memories, and eventually your long-term memories, but it also takes your ability to do things, function, brush your teeth, zip up your clothes, but it also changes your sensory perception on your environment. So how you're perceiving the world is changing, right? So not only is your memory getting worse, you don't know where you are, but things start to look different, or you can't even recognize things anymore, patterns and colors, right? And then here I am. All right, let's go. Let's take off your clothes. Let's get in the shower. It's not a very good scenario, right? So we have to be really, really slow. We have to be careful how we're approaching people. We have to be individualized, right? If I can get the person to take a shower, then I'm going to be doing the showers all the time, because that's going to be less stress on the person, on the patient, right? It's not about us. It's not about us making it easier for us. It's about making it easier for them,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Phil,
Less
did,
distress.
have you had patients hallucinate and wonder who you are, and maybe you're a spy, or looking to murder
Yeah,
them, or what? I mean, right?
yeah,
Do you have those
yeah. I've
experiences?
had patients that absolutely. I've had patients that think that I'm their son or their husband. I've had patients that think that I'm like a spy, like you said, an evil person, just some, random person. So that's why it's really important to really establish that trust, do that soft approach, really get in and really kind of feel out, if you can even do anything. Because I've had patients really just tell me to go away, and that's okay, and I leave, So, but yeah, there's so many different scenarios. I've had patients that think they're Jesus and stuff like that, but not from Alzheimer's, but from other mental disorders. But
Yeah.
I've had some pretty wild stories. Yeah.
What do you, Phil? What do you do for yourself as a vent, as a way to regenerate and recuperate? Because it's got to be stressful.
Yeah, it definitely can be stressful, and I have little kids as well, so I try to spend as much time with my family. I've definitely recently taken a step back from doing so much, trying to support my own family in that regards, and really just trying to spend time with my daughters. I like basketball. I like to play basketball. I like to watch basketball. So I do a lot of that, a lot of physical exertion to try to unwind, so a lot of that type of stuff, you know,
Yeah, that's good.
meditation. I do a lot of mindfulness as well. So trying to do that more and more.
So I will say that there was some magic in what you said about the story. Having them, write about their history. When they're lucid enough to create or recollect those times. But you know, I think that of value to share with our listening audience too is something. My father passed in 2009. He had pancreatic cancer, and that stuff just wipes you out immediately the moment you diagnose it, right?
Yeah.
I had a life coach that was a disciple of Tony Robbins at the time, and she was magical, and she told me something that I share with a lot of people because it was so profound. 2 years before my dad had passed away, I wrote him a love letter. Hang on, I'm going to try to tell you this without crumbling here, but I told my dad, I forgave my dad for little things that happened along, my years of growing up, and told him what a wonderful person he was. And so he got that when he was healthy, and
Yeah.
he rejoiced because I didn't realize he felt guilty about certain things that he didn't do or did do or what have you. And by the way, we
Right.
had a good relationship along the way, but writing a love letter to that parent before before they pass, or even at a time where there's still some clarity and that they can, uh, you know, understand what you're saying is a level of forgiveness that is really an experience that you both will never forget. So being able to do that was magical. And I don't know if you have some suggestions or techniques for the family members of those that are in hospice, but that to me was probably one of the most enlightening moments or experiences for me. And I feel like I didn't have to make up, with with my dad when I found out that he was, passing away, or that, he was dying.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's I tell all my families and everybody I come in contact with. The only thing we have in this life is the relationships. That's all we have. At the end of the day, when we're in that bed, laying in that bed, because the scary part is it's not if, it's gonna be when, right? We all know. We have an expiration date. We live like we don't, right? But we start living like we do, right? We start fostering those relationships with those people, right? One of the number one questions I get every time I get a patient and I interact with somebody new is when, how much time do we have, right? I don't know that, the doctors don't even know that, right? But what I do know is what I tell them is any one of us could die at any moment. Any one of us can die at any moment, right? So they have a higher percentage of dying at any moment, obviously, but we all can die at any moment. It doesn't matter, at the drop of a hat, right? So the only thing we have at the end of the day is relationships, is the people that are surrounding us. And at the end of your life, when you're in that bed, that's what we want and that's what we need the most, are the people that we love and the relationships that we have. And that's what we need towards the end. And to write a letter is wonderful. It's amazing, and I commend you for that. And I'm very happy that you're able to do that with your father. And my father died unexpectedly, so being able to do that, was impossible. But before he died, we did have conversations about his life and forgiveness and love, right? So I do feel okay, but like I said, we all could die at any moment. So having those conversations, I think, are what's most important, right? And having those, not just, don't make them assumptions, right? You look at your wife, look at your daughter, look at your loved one, and look at them and tell them, I see you, I love you, right? Just know that, so just really, I try to, doing this job, doing this work, it really puts life into perspective for me, because I know that at any moment we could die. I've had patients that are younger than me, right? And it's just, it really puts life into perspective for you, you know. So it really does. Every day you have to look in the mirror, right? It sounds cliche. You have to look in the mirror and be okay with the person that you see. If you walk out that door and you die, you're going to be okay with that person, right? So that's really what it boils down to. Having those conversations, right? Building those relationships.
I love that what you just said, and you said earlier that a lot of people in these homes are lonely, and I think we get caught up into, I have to make this meeting, or I have to do this, or I have to do this. In reality, all we really have to do is have relationships and tell our loved ones
Right. Right.
that they're important
Right.
and thank you
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I think sometimes we get our worlds mixed up, and that we don't want to be lonely when we get older, unless we know, hey,
Right.
I did a good job and everybody's happy, everybody's in a good place.
Right. Right. A lot of people don't want to be a burden to their kids. A lot of the elderly, they just don't want to be a burden, right? That's a number one concern for them, is they don't want to be a burden. So they're not going to push, they're not going to pry, they're not going to make it a big deal to invite you over. Do you know what I mean? So it really, if you want that relationship, you really have to try, but it's just as simple as like just dropping off a hamburger, for 10 minutes and just having a conversation. I mean, you don't like, I ask some of my patients, hey, is there anything that you need? Like, if I'm covering for another nurse, is there anything I can do for you? I would love a cheeseburger. So, just buying a cheeseburger, right? Just going and buying a cheeseburger and dropping it off. It made that man's day, right? So it's just simple little things, simple things.
Isn't it always the case? It's the simplest things that have the most profound effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Before while my partner still can collect himself over there, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, because you're talking about mental health and and all this, but you, on top of this, you went through a personal journey with something that a lot of other people have, and that's Crohn's disease. And
Yeah, absolutely.
and people don't realize that here you're trying to deal with a brain issues and elderly, but you're also dealing with the stomach issues, and we all know the stomach talks to the brain. And so, can you talk to us about your journey of Crohn's disease?
Yeah, so I was actually diagnosed with Crohn's and high blood pressure at 18 years old. I was told that, it was genetic. There was nothing I could do about it. Um, so I had gone through a couple procedures. It was non-ulcerative. It wasn't too crazy, but it was very distressing, and it could lead to very, very bad outcomes if it progressed. And just being so young, and I was on my own. I The medication was like $300 a month, and just a lot of issues. So I just couldn't afford some of that stuff. And this was before I was a nurse, and so I kind of ignored it. And it did get a little bit worse. I ended up having a lot of anxiety, a lot of problems like that. A little bit later in my 20s, mid 20s, and I I actually ended up meeting a naturopath, and he told me, "Hey, have you thought about cutting out some stuff out of your diet?" And I did. I ended up jumping on the wagon of the plant based in the mid 2000s. So about 2012, I became plant based. A lot of the science made sense from a cardiovascular standpoint, as far as with my blood pressure issues, and my diet and my Crohn's. There wasn't really anything that could hurt from it, right? So I went ahead and switched, and immediately felt better. Anxiety kind of went away. My weight went down significantly at first, but mental health improved as well. So from there, I ended up still having issues with my GI. It took about 3 years, I think, until I really noticed that my GI was kind of back. My blood pressure issues pretty much went away immediately after I lost all that weight. Well, I mean, it was about 20 pounds, but my blood pressure went away. I ended up taking at the suggestion of my naturopath to do some vitamin D, and to do some omegas, which I did. I do some algae omegas. So those, I think the vitamin D actually helped with my blood pressure a lot as well, because it's a hormone. So, and it does help with that. It's responsible for that system in our body. So it did help. I think I was deficient in that, but my diet also helped as well by bringing my weight down. Obviously, helped with my blood pressure, and my cholesterol and everything is below normal every time I go and get it checked. So, but anyways, I had been reading studies about just people with the plant based, and them being able to heal their epithelial tissue and their linings, and I had really good hope for it. I hadn't had a colonoscopy, a check in about 8 years. I just kind of put it off. I just not a really big fan of going under. Don't want to. I'm not a big fan of elective surgeries, anyways. I don't really want to do that, but I ended up having kids, and I really had to go check, and I was just hoping and praying that everything was good. And I actually went this last year, and I don't have Crohn's anymore. So the doctor was kind of surprised. I didn't have to go back. She's like, "You don't have to go back for 2 years." So I looked at the imaging, and I was just blown away. It looked like just normal skin. There was no inflammation anymore. Um, there was no um, there was no colitis. So it was colitis and Crohn's. There was none of that stuff. So it was amazing. So, and that's definitely attributed to, obviously what we're putting in our body. Right. So, and part of that is the inflammation, right? My blood pressure is an inflammation disorder, or Crohn's is an inflammation disorder. Right. So, a lot of that stuff can be prevented by what you're putting in your mouth. And I don't harp on plant based, none of that stuff. It's just, just be healthy and be smart about it, and don't eat overly processed junk, and, take care of yourself. I grew up, my parents were really young when they had me. My dad was 15, my mom was 17, and I grew up, my dad was a gas station food guy in McDonald's, and so that's what it was the commercialization of America, right? Like the epic time to be alive, right? So in the 80s, in going into the 90s. So, and I ended up poor, and stuff like that. I ended up growing up in foster care, actually, in a group home with 10 boys. So that's kind of what drew me to taking care of people, is because I knew what it was like to not have people, to not have somebody by your side in those tough times. So, like I said, I try to be that person for everybody. I try to be that person for families, for patients,
Mm.
but yeah, so that was just such a bad time to really, learn diet, learn how to eat, and learn how to live, and it's just the worst habits that we all picked up back in those times. So I just, didn't really know any better. And even in school, it's just a general nutrition class. It's not really talking about nutrition and health and how it's linked, and just kind of like this assumption, so it's definitely
Were you a
important.
nurse? Were you a nurse when you made those changes in diet? Were you already a nurse, or was it beforehand?
Yes. Yes. No, I was a nurse. I had been a nurse for about 5 or 6 years at that point. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
interesting. You were taught, all this about, mainstream medicine, and then I commend you on venturing
Hmm.
out and trying something more
Yeah. Yeah.
non-conventional or holistic. And how did you
Well,
process that and decide?
yeah. Well, I've always kind of been natural. I mean, I think my last name is Italian, Puleo. It's means herbalist, natural medicine.
Oh,
So I've always been
yeah,
kind of natural in that regard. I mean, Western medicine is amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Western
yeah.
medicine is fantastic. It's the best in the world. If you need something that needs to be fixed acutely, you got it. We got you. But there was never a lot of focus on preventative health. Even going to the cardiologist and some of these doctors, there was a lot of just being dismissed about your symptoms. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
you're not even a person. Like their doctor don't even look at you. They look at the computer the whole time. So there's a lot of that in just meeting with the naturopath and the holistic doctors, and just kind of seeing the difference in the approach, and knowing nursing philosophy. We are holistic. I mean, our theory, nursing philosophy is a holistic approach. Doctors, doctors are educated on disease processes and how to fix those diseases. MDs, DOs do have a little bit more holistic education. Osteopath, they do the adjustments and stuff like that. My father-in-law was an osteopath, and he was a more holistic approach. But no, none of them are as holistic as nursing, right? So we, I'm always of of the impression that, whatever you want to do as a nurse, they teach us this stuff. They teach us stuff about medication and stuff like that. But as a nurse, I'm taught whatever you want to do. If you want to take that herb, then I'm gonna talk to the doctor about you taking that herb, and then we're gonna try it. Right. So, I'm here to give you the information, give you the benefits and the pros and cons, and you decide. And then whatever you want to do, I got your back. Right. So that's kind of my approach. And I love information. I love to learn and to really figure stuff out. So being able to do that, a lot of the evidence is pointing to, you know, um, changing your diet, and your cardiovascular system will improve, and your blood pressure will improve. And it did. So, that's really what it came down to, is just me as the consumer, right? Not taking no, or just like, oh, this is genetic as an answer, and trying to learn and study and advocate for myself. Right. So for the audience, right, that's the biggest thing to take away from all of this is to advocate, right? Don't give up. If you're not getting answers, keep trying. Call someone else. Go to a different place, right? The doctors and the facilities, they need us, right? You're the patient, you're the consumer, you're the customer, okay? Don't forget that. I always tell my families, you're the boss. You tell me what you want to do. I'm not running this ship. You are.
There you go. All right, Philip, as chiropractors, and especially, we've been advocating for years about the gut brain barrier and leaky gut, and
Right.
talking about that, which is now starting to catch on. But in our profession, that's been something for a long time. And you mentioned earlier Alzheimer's, you see on a huge rise, but we also know
Right.
a lot in this country, eating clean is hard. It's not,
Right. Right.
other countries a little easier, but this country, there's so many preservatives, so much. I mean, we've seen memes and commercials where people grab a loaf of bread that's been in their pantry for a year, and it still looks the same as when they bought it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you see that rise in mental health, Alzheimer's, dementia? Do you see the correlation between that and our gut health, and what you've learned in Crohn's?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's starting to become pretty obvious. I know for long time, decades, they have been speculating that Alzheimer's was kind of like a diabetes for the brain. It's kind of a metabolic disorder. What are we doing? What are we eating? There had been a recent study that came out where they had accidentally found the plaques in the stomach lining, and they were kind of surprised in Parkinson's and Alzheimer's patients. The plaques started in the stomach lining. Excuse me. They actually ended up taking it a step further and putting the plaques in mice, and they found that the plaques would travel up the vagus nerve and deposit into the brainstem, and they started to show these signs of um, Alzheimer's, cognitive mental impairments, mobility issues, tremors, and stuff like that. So there is something to that, right? So we do know, um, when, like I said, talking to those neurologists and those doctors about, hey, what is the number one thing that I can do to try to prevent this from happening to me? And it's diet, exercise, keeping your blood pressure under control, and what you're putting in your mouth. Um, the ultra processed stuff now, they're starting to categorize it. It's linked to mental decline.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely.
Phil, before we wrap up, we do a fun little segment, rapid fire questions. And I have 5
Okay.
questions for you that I'm going to
All
ask
right.
you to answer. It's going to put you on the spot. You'll probably
Oh,
have an
okay.
answer for each. If you can answer quickly, great. Um, Sometimes we get carried away and get hung up on your cool answer, and sometimes not.
All right.
But I'm going to
All
start with
right.
number 1 if you're ready, Phil.
All right. Go
Ready?
ahead.
Question number 1.
Yep.
If you could go back in time, who would you like to meet and why?
Oh man, I would probably like to go and meet Kobe. He was a big time, uh, he was a big time growing up, big motivation. Be able to pick his brain. Even to this day, his mentality is, what I stand by, being a better person every day. So I would say Kobe. If going back in time, I could meet anybody, I would say Kobe.
That's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Question number 2,
Yeah.
Phil. What is the best thing you have learned from a patient?
From a patient?
Yeah.
The best thing I've learned from a patient. Man, that's a tough one. I've
Mhm.
learned so many different things. I would say honestly the best thing would be a couple recipes that I have.
Oh.
I've like uh,
I didn't expect that.
that I cherish, because I'm Italian, so there was a couple Italian patients that I did get a couple recipes from, and I wasn't able to get from my grandmother. So yeah, so
Right.
that actually is near and dear to my heart. So actually, I would say there's a couple recipes that I have.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic because
Yeah.
some of them, they hold those recipes to they take them to the grave, man. So
Right. Absolutely.
You got honored.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a great
Yep.
answer. Question number 3. Best tip that you could give someone dealing with a loved one with Alzheimer's.
Best tip is just to have patience, really. It's just to have patience. Don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up. I tell families all the time, we're professionals. I've been doing this 18 years, and it's hard for me to take care of somebody, right? And that whatever's going on, right? Sometimes it's very difficult. So for somebody that's not trained and doesn't really understand, it's very, very difficult. But just give yourself some grace, honestly, and don't beat yourself up.
Fantastic. Question number 4. What is your favorite book that you feel everyone should read?
My favorite book is, I think that everybody should read, is The Alchemist.
Ooh.
How come?
Yeah.
That's a great book.
Yeah.
How come? Why?
How come?
Yeah.
Okay. You'd have to read the book.
All right. No, I was asking you. All right. Fair enough. Okay. Question number 5. And the last one, Phil. What is a moment that you have witnessed in your work that still makes you laugh when you think about it? Or it could be a couple moments.
There's been plenty of moments. Over the years, but one of the biggest moments that stands out to me is we try to always do events. They have proms, they have all these things, with these buildings. They have kind of throwback things that we do. So just one of the biggest things for me going back is just being able to spend those times with those peoples. I like to go and dance with the ladies, so they always laugh at me. So actually at the facility that we were at with your mother-in-law, we actually every month we go and do birthday parties. So we'll bring 2 cakes, and whoever has their birthdays for the month, they'll come down and we'll dance and sing. So actually the last 2 months they were laughing at me. I was dancing. We were just getting down, and it's just really to just break the ice, because I mean, think about it, right? You have a room full of people that we're just expecting them to come up and dance in front of everybody, right? So we got to do it too, right? So we got to meet them where they are, right? So like I said, so that's really the biggest thing, is just being able to spend that time with them. And I just like to make a fool of myself. That way they don't feel like they're on the spot, so that they feel more encouraged to come out and participate. But yeah, there's not really like a a lot of what I do there's not a lot of laughs for what I do, but when I do have the laughs going out, I'll tell you, one of the most interesting things was this year that I did was I was hanging around with the marketing staff.